The more he calls, the more he texts, the less he's into you. He messages you good morning every single day. He calls you once he gets home at 3 a.m. after he spent hours at the pub with the boys because he misses you so much. He keeps calling and texting you, checking in throughout your day, how you going. You spend hours on FaceTime before you eventually fall asleep together on the phone. But not ever has this man officially taken you out on a date. Neither did he give you gifts, flowers, jewelry, and actually ask you to be his girlfriend. Stop thinking just because he's calling and texting that he's into you. That's a lie. What he's doing is keeping his options warm, entertaining you, while he's keeping an eye out for his dream girl. Stop waiting on the sideline and stop entertaining men who don't want to be with you.
Ooh, yeah. I'm gonna have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Well, if you need any more proof to the fact that modern women have no idea what they want, you need not look any further than right here. For years, modern women have been complaining that men aren't doing enough. They're not communicating, they're not sending texts every day, they're not offering birth sacrifices in her name on enough occasions. But now they're doing an about face and say that if a man is taking time out of his day to openly communicate his fondness for a lady, then he's not all that into her. Either way, if a man talks, then he's wrong. The only thing that these broads can openly agree upon is that a man's feelings for a woman can only be measured by how much money he's willing to spend on her. He must buy her presents, dinners, and luxury day spas for her and her slew of backstabbing girlfriends. Then, and only then, has he proven himself to her. But I hate to break it to you, sister. If you're saying that your affection can only be obtained through material gain, that doesn't make you a girlfriend. That makes you something different.
That's why I praise the Lord for prostitutes.
So you probably noticed a lot of people in their 30s getting divorced lately, so let's talk about it. Now, a majority of my clients, yes, are women, but I will say this. They are very consistent across the board as to why they are getting a divorce. And I pretty much have a theory to what has caused this to happen in such big numbers to people 30s and up.
Wait for it.
Growing up, we were told as women to sit down and be quiet, do what the man says, and we were really just told that, oh, marriage is hard, suck it up. Men were told, don't talk about your feelings, they don't matter, go to work and come home and provide. That's what you need to do.
What?
Hey, woman, were your clients raised in the 1950s or something? Because 30 years ago, the whole notion of women submitting to men was still considered to be an extremely sexist viewpoint, even for the early 90s. Western girls weren't taught this virtue. They were taught they could be anything they wanted to be when they could grow up. That was like the whole thing about the 90s. But the virtues of stoicism in boys never really went away, but that's because stoicism is a required virtue in order for society to thrive. Men need to be in control of their emotions. They need to go to work and they need to provide for their families. And that's something society still demands to this day. Just take a look at all of the professional failures on TikTok who are constantly shaming men for not providing enough. And the only reason why you want men to be in touch with their feelings is because it gives you ammo to manipulate and control this man. But we know better, sister. There is no chance you're getting any of that information.
Real men hide their feelings. Why? Because it's none of your f***ing business.
So what this created was a lot of women 30s and up who don't even have an identity because they don't know who they are other than being a mom and a wife. And they were really told not to even be themselves, to be all these other identities that people wanted them to be, including their husband. And then it created a lot of men who are completely incapable of having a mature conversation or communicating correctly because they don't know how to process their emotions or even talk about them, so they just hold them in and it comes out in anger and they end up gaslighting you.
Wrong! That's wrong!
Lady, men are not responsible for the modern woman's lack of identity. You can thank modern feminism for that. Modern women do not have anything that makes them unique, free-thinking individuals. Social media, propaganda, and the public education system did their thinking for them, and they just fell in line like good little lemmings. And in the process, modern women became emotionally unhinged wrecks who savagely lash out on anybody who disagrees with them. Meanwhile, men control their emotions and move on with life because we have people counting on us. There's no need for us to be in touch with our fifis because we're mature enough to know that we are responsible for dealing with our own baggage. But more importantly, nobody really gives a damn anyway. So we just keep it to ourselves. We'd be more than happy to have a mature discussion when it comes to certain problems, but in order to have a mature conversation, you need to be mature. And I'm fairly certain you didn't notice, but mature women are kind of in short supply these days.
So take these women who were told to sit down, shut up, and serve their husbands, and that's what they're supposed to do, and take them finding their true self and identity in their 30s and their voice and their confidence, and add that to men who are still the same, the men in these situations that are still the same, and it's a recipe for disaster. You have one person changing and growing, and you have somebody else who is still unwilling to admit they need to change and grow. The reason you see a lot of divorces now is because those people are truly finding who they are and being their authentic self, and they can't beat that with somebody who has refused to change. And that's why, because of how we were raised back then.
Oh God, I just hit my head against a wall stud in order to try and imagine a world where anything that this broad is saying makes any sense, but it's impossible, I tell ya. And that's because what this broad is ignoring is a key fact that renders her argument completely meaningless. Now, you're saying that these women are divorcing their husbands so they can go and become authentic. But if we take a look at the current state of Western society, what good has that done? We had a system that existed for thousands of years and it worked just fine for us. Now, all of a sudden, women need to go find themselves on a spiritual healing journey and everything's going to hell. And if we're using your argument that men haven't changed, then you don't need to be a rocket surgeon to figure out who the true culprit is for the decay of modern society. I'll give you a hint, darling. It sure as hell ain't us.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby! Don't you put that on us!
Never the f again am I letting a guy take me on a date to go golf. Like, what the f is this shit? I just wanna go home. The fuck?
That's not my problem. It's yours.
I know this is going to come as a shock to many of you, but I am not a sports historian, but I've always been of the firm belief that golf was invented by Scottish Highlanders for two reasons. The first was to quench the thirst of a man's never-ending desire to hit a ball with a stick. But second, and more importantly, it was an excuse to get the hell away from their wives. Now, I was going to say that it was also an excuse for men to get drunk with their buddies, but then again, we're talking about Highlanders here. They don't need an excuse for that. Now, I've made it obvious that I am not a golfman. I do not play golf, nor do I ever intend to. But I don't need to be Tiger Gilmore to know that a guy shouldn't be taking a woman out golfing unless she knows how to play golf and knows how to lose with some dignity. Now, woman, you clearly don't play golf, so I'm forced to assume that you're out there because the man in question is one hell of a Chad. And if that's the case, you got no right to complain. You went of your own accord. So do that man a favor, put down the phone, look pretty,
and stop your bitching!
I do not tend to take a lot of advice from men, even the most successful men. And I mean advice in the form of self-help books, podcasts with successful men, or just men in general. I tend to take their advice with a grain of salt because I do not think it is applicable to women and mothers in particular. And I was reminded of this listening to the Diary of a CEO with Casey Neistat. I don't know Casey Neistat very well. I know of him, obviously, but I don't follow him. I never did. And so limited knowledge base. But I was listening to his podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and it was really interesting. But I was really hung up on this fact that they talk a lot about how he became a father at a very young age. He was like 15 years old and he had his first kid. And after breaking up with his then girlfriend at the time and the mother of his child at 17 or 18 years old, he moved from wherever they were in Connecticut and he moved to New York. And he talks about how that journey required him to be fearless, to have risk, to be willing to have risk. He persevered, he was patient, but he was willing to kind of do the gritty stuff. He slept on somebody's couch. He lived in a halfway house. Like, he lived in a home with 10 other people, like whatever it might be. Like he was willing to do the stuff that sucks to find success and whatever success meant to him. But he was willing to grind it out and to be very patient and to really persevere. And he keeps talking about that, how he was just like willing to do it. And the whole time I'm listening thinking, where's your kid?
This is beyond easy.
Well, that's fair, Gladys. I don't take the advice of any modern female influencer because your advice isn't pertinent to men's issues, mainly because you deny the fact that men's issues exist. You are in no position to take the moral high ground there, Gladys. The answer to your question is incredibly simple. Where is this dude's kid? It's none of your damn business. Maybe he went to New York for job opportunities to send money back home. Maybe the mother of his child married another man who adopted his kid as his own. Or maybe the court system had to get involved because he was 15 at the time, and if the mother was a legal adult, that would mean she committed statutory hard R word that rhymes with tape. And Gladys, if that's the case, your misandry is so deeply rooted that you would rather take the side of a tapist over a minor. And this has nothing to do with the kid. You couldn't give two dog poopies about that kid. This has everything to do with you blaming men for all of your problems because you don't have a sense of identity, only victimhood. And without victimhood, you are nothing, Gladys.
None of these things are possible with a 2-year-old baby. You can't sleep on somebody else's couch with your 2-year-old baby. You can't stay out till 4 a.m. with your 2-year-old baby. You can't live in a halfway house like that with a 2-year-old baby because he claims he bribed his way into it. Like, you don't do that with a 2-year-old. And he's talking about how he doesn't have money for a taxi or anything like that. And the whole time I'm thinking, where's this kid? This kid is probably with his mom. This kid is with his mom probably 90% of the time. She's probably doing 90% of the work, paying for 90% of the things, and raising him essentially on her own. And this is not to say that Casey's not a good dad, that he didn't participate financially or at all, because I don't know. He doesn't talk about it. And that is why I can't take his advice. I want to know what happened there. If it were a mother telling that story, you would know what she did for childcare, how she paid for everything for that child, where they lived, who supported her, what was her village like. Like, you'd know those things because those things were critical to her success if she had success. But for him, it wasn't critical because he had her. Men have women. That is the biggest lesson I've learned. When they tell us any kind of advice about how they became successful, it's because they had women supporting them.
Bullshit!
Hey Gladys, just because you spent half of a sentence saying that you're not condemning this man as a bad father does not mean you are not overtly accusing this man of being a bad father. You're always talking about how men are these dopey imbeciles that are somehow able to domineer women into thinking too much. About how men are these incapable buffoons that are somehow in power in every aspect of your life. I mean, that's your bread and butter right there. You never miss an opportunity to smear the name of men for virtually no reason. And even if a man is out there working his ass off and grinding his body to the bone, you still have to vicariously take credit for his success because your life is completely and utterly meaningless. Men aren't allowed to have anything anymore without some woman coming along and saying his success doesn't count because of some assumption that holds no weight. But Gladys, come on, you can't take credit for a man's work just because you're a failure. That's not how life works, sweetheart.
The problem is, if that woman, if she, his baby mama, wanted to do the same thing that Casey did, would that have been possible? Could she have left her kid with him for 90% of the time and participated slightly and maybe monetarily, but mostly was off sleeping on couches in New York City? Could she have done that? Probably not. And if she had, she would have been frowned upon for doing so. And that's the difference. He is held up on this pedestal for doing this work and for becoming successful and doing it the hard way. But if she were to do the same thing, she would be called a bad mother who put her career before her kid. And that is why I don't take advice from men, even successful men, because their advice is not applicable to women. It just doesn't apply in today's society, and it doesn't apply fucking logistically because it's impossible to do the things they do because we are held to a different standard and expected to do more than they do.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
Gladys, take a seat. You really need to stop huffing cough syrup. It's really not helping you. day in and day out, we are subjected to stories of stunning and brave single moms who put their careers before their kids. It's a badge of honor for the modern woman because she fought against the patriarchy and won the right to work a job she loathes and to pay taxes just like the rest of us. You've just proven the point that if a man does it, then he's a bad father by default because he abandoned his kids to go sleep on couches or something. You assume because he's omitting details that he's automatically the bad guy, despite the fact that those details have nothing to do with the subject at hand. In your eyes, all men are just evil, and if it wasn't for you and your abyss of lackluster expertise, that somehow makes you the paragon of wisdom when it comes to men, even though all of the bile you spew out is nothing but hate and judgment towards us. And that's why I'll never take advice from you, Gladys. Well, that and I don't need it, because unlike you, I actually know how to use my brain. And that's gonna do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button. Ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, and make sure to share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for checking out the new video, and until next time, peace out, homies.